We go to school for so many years, but it seems that we learn little about history. Have you ever heard of Konrad Adenauer? Just like many great historical figures, he is rarely mentioned and almost forgotten. If mentioned at all, Konrad Adenauer is usually little more than a side note in history class. You might have heard that he was the first German Chancellor after the Second World War. That's about all I knew about him. It wasn't until much later that I discovered his fascinating life story. Konrad Adenauer can be credited with the unimaginable job of helping rebuild Germany and its economy after the Second World War. Konrad Adenauer was born 1876 in Cologne, which was in Rhenish Prussia back then. Already as a child, he had a lifelong passion for inventing and developed over 40 inventions, such as the reaction steam engine, which was supposed to filter out dust produced by cars. After his final school examination, Abitur in German, in 1894, Adenauer studied law and politics at the universities of Freiburg, Munich, and Bonn. In 1896, he was mustered for the Prussian army, but did not pass the physical examination due to chronic respiratory problems he had experienced since childhood. He graduated in 1900 and afterwards worked as a lawyer at the court in Cologne for 4 years. As a devout Catholic, he joined the Center Party, in German Zentrumspartei, in 1906, which was a Catholic-only party back then. A major debate had occurred within the Center Party since 1906 regarding the question of whether it should open up and allow other Christians to join or continue to be a Catholic-only party. Adenauer was one of the leading advocates for opening up the party to Protestant Christians. He was elected to Cologne city government in 1906 and was the vice mayor and then mayor of Cologne for a long time. He avoided the extreme political movements that attracted so many of his generation. He was committed to decency, diligence, Christian morals, and values, and was dedicated to fight against irrationality and political immorality. In 1917, he was elected as mayor of Cologne for a 12-year period and re-elected in 1929. This made him the youngest municipal leader in Prussia during the Weimar Republic. Adenauer was one of the strongest political figures in Germany. During World War I, he worked closely with the army to maximize the city's role as a rare base of supply and transportation for the Western Front. He paid special attention to the civilian food supply, enabling the residents to avoid the worst of the severe shortages that most German cities experienced during 1918 and 1919. In 1918, he even invented a soy-based sausage called the Cologne sausage to help feed the city. When the Nazi Party won several municipal, state, and national elections in between 1930 and 1933, Adenauer, a strong opponent of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, still believed that improvements in the national economy would make his strategy work: ignore the Nazis and concentrate on the communist threat. He thought that based on election returns, the Nazis could become part of the Prussian and Reich governments, even when he was already the target of intense personal attacks from them. By early February, Adenauer finally realized the futility of all discussions with them and any attempts at compromise with the Nazis. Cologne City Council and the Prussian Parliament had been dissolved. He was officially dismissed as mayor and his bank accounts were frozen. He had no money, no home, and no job. Adenauer was dismissed as mayor of Cologne by the Nazis, also because he had refused to fly their flag outside of City Hall. Warned of plans against his life, he fled Cologne and began a long exile, including several months spent in a monastery, that later culminated in his arrest and plans for deportation to a concentration camp, where he was scheduled for execution late in the war. Even his family faced persecution, and his wife Gussie Adenauer was arrested at some point, and under intense pressure she gave up Adenauer's location during an interrogation. Afterwards she tried to commit suicide. She never fully recovered and died shortly after the war. When the American army overran Cologne, the army sought out Adenauer to become mayor of Cologne once again. The American policy was to restore non-Nazi leaders to the positions they held before the war. The city clearly needed needed Adenauer's leadership talent. Cologne was among the most devastated cities in Germany. Its population had dramatically fallen during the Second World War. The American victors made the 69-year-old, who was at the top of a list of untainted politicians, Lord Mayor of Cologne again. He faced the task of bringing new life back to a city that had been severely destroyed. Yet, after only a few months, the British military government that was now in power removed him from office for having criticized the occupation policy, and he was prohibited by the British from further political activity. It was this event that ironically catapulted Adenauer toward his future leadership of the Western German nation. Had the British allowed him to remain mayor of Cologne, he probably never would have entered national politics. Instead, during the ban on overt public life, Adenauer traveled widely in Germany, meeting quietly with various Christians to help found a new Christian political party. And when the ban on Adenauer's political activities was lifted and organized political activity approved by the Allies in 1946, Adenauer emerged as the natural leader of the new Christian Democratic Union, called CDU in German. The new Germany, Adenauer stressed, must be based on Christian principles. The state must never again come to dominate the individual. In practice, this meant that individual freedom, private property, and private initiative must be the fundamental building blocks of the new German society. Adenauer rejected socialism or government ownership of industry, which other German parties were advocating. The coalition of parties led by Adenauer won the first post-war election in 1949. Adenauer was then 73 years old. His doctor advised him to remain in office for only 2 years. He remained for 14, stepping down at the age of 87 in 1963, winning election after election by large margins, and presiding over the economic miracle that saw West Germany rise from the rubble and become a prosperous industrial giant in just a few years. If the German people are ever to rise again from their present state of abject misery, Adenauer declared, if they will ever work their way to prosperity again, they will owe this rise solely to the initiative of the individual and never to the bureaucracy of the state. The other crowning achievement of Adenauer's statesmanship was his firm alignment of Germany with the West. This could not be accomplished, sadly, without the division of Germany into East and West, but the freedom and future of Germany could not have been secured in any other way. For Adenauer understood that reunification of Germany could only have been consummated under terms dictated by the Soviet Union. From the very beginning, Adenauer laments in his memoirs, there was only one way for us to save our political liberty, our personal freedom, our security, the way of life we had formed in many centuries, and which was based on the Christian and humanistic ideology. We must form firm links with the peoples and countries that shared our views concerning the state, the individual, liberty, and property. We must resolutely and firmly resist any further pressure from the East. His memories of the Weimar Republic experience led him to devise a constitution providing for stronger, more stable party coalitions. Even with his firm principles and resolute character, Adenauer was keenly aware of the difficulties of Christians in politics. Professional politics, Adenauer told his biographer, while still in office, are not exactly favorable to a Christian. I see with fear, he said in 1962, how the youth are growing more and more distant from the Christian faith and the Christian idea of the good. So we must, far more than years ago, ever again show them and impress upon them that despite the developments of this age, only upon the truths of the Christian faith can the well-being of mankind be founded. Konrad Adenauer died on April 19, 1967. His state funeral at the Cologne Cathedral was attended by many thousands of German citizens and foreign dignitaries, among them the American President Lyndon Johnson. You might wonder how many of them really knew how wise, diligent, far-sighted, and able a statesman had passed from their midst.